Florida's dream is collapsing, quietly and with receipts. Over 1,000 people move here every single day, but what they're not told? Some towns are straight-up economic traps. We're talking violent crime rates up to 300% higher than the national average, water that fails inspections, schools that rank in the bottom 10%, and job markets so bad the fastest-growing industry is moving away. This isn't just bad luck, it's systemic failure. And if you pick the wrong zip code, your mortgage could become a financial death sentence. This isn't about Miami or Orlando. These are the forgotten towns, the beautiful disasters hiding behind palm trees and palm reader budgets. You're about to find out where not to move in Florida, unless you like broken promises, cracked roads, and the kind of heat that melts your savings. Let's break down the 10 worst places to live in Florida, starting right now. Number 10, Palatka. Where the St. Johns River flows and hope tries not to drown. Palatka, Florida, is the kind of place where the natural beauty tricks you into thinking everything's fine, until you actually start living there. Nestled on the scenic St. Johns River, it should be a Florida gem. Instead, it's a rusting trophy case for what happens when economic decay quietly eats a city from the inside out. The numbers? They speak louder than the local government ever has. Median household income? Around $27,000. That's barely enough for a used car, let alone a decent standard of living. Nearly 30% of residents live below the poverty line, and the unemployment rate has flirted with double digits multiple times over the past decade. And if you thought low income meant low crime, think again. Palatka's violent crime rate is over 80% higher than the national average, and property crimes are so common the local police blotter reads like a what not to do manual. But stats are only half the story. Walk downtown and you'll see buildings that look like they've been auditioning for a post-apocalyptic Florida movie. Infrastructure is outdated. Whole blocks feel forgotten by time and public funding. The city tried to gentrify with riverfront parks and a museum overhaul, except those funds barely scratched the surface. Local schools? They rank below the 40th percentile statewide, and the opioid crisis didn't skip over Palatka. In fact, it planted roots. Between 2017 and 2021, Putnam County was among the highest in Florida for opioid-related deaths per capita. There's beauty in the landscape, sure, but the system here, it's broken. If you're looking to raise a family, good luck explaining why the nearest quality job is in Gainesville, and why the grocery store's freezer section has more frostbite than your Wi-Fi signal has bandwidth. One local said it best on Facebook. Living in Palatka is like watching a fire burn in slow motion, except the fire department's on lunch. Brutal, but honest. Number 9. Immokalee, where the tomatoes are ripe and the inequality is rotten. You ever visit a town and think, wow, this feels like two separate worlds were jammed together and no one finished stitching the seams? Welcome to Immokalee. This town is famous in agricultural circles for being the tomato capital of Florida. It supplies over 90% of the winter tomatoes in the U.S. That's not a typo. The fields here feed the nation, but the people working those fields can barely afford bread. The median income in Immokalee is just $24,000. Yes, you read that right. Nearly 45% of the population lives in poverty, and many families live 4 to 6 to a trailer, with few legal protections. We're talking about a community where essential workers have been called heroes, but are treated like an afterthought once the crops are picked. And don't let the rural charm fool you. Public services? Underfunded? Healthcare access? Dismal. The nearest hospital with full emergency services is 45 minutes away. Schools struggle with overcrowding, outdated materials, and chronic underperformance. Immokalee High School has a graduation rate that's 10% below the state average, and fewer than 50% of students test at grade level in reading and math. This is a town where the bus routes tell a story of isolation, where housing is so scarce and overpriced that families are forced to crowd into dilapidated trailers surrounded by drainage ditches. And yet, corporate farms still rake in millions. There's a tension here that no tourist brochure will show you. Activists have long fought for labor rights, fair wages, and humane working conditions. And while there's been progress, thanks to the coalition of Immokalee workers, life here remains a daily grind that most outsiders wouldn't survive a week of. The crime rate isn't astronomical, But desperation doesn't always show up on police reports. In Immokalee, the silence is louder than sirens. And if you think it's just a hard-working farm town, spend a summer here with no AC and a paycheck that won't stretch past Wednesday. The tomatoes are ripe, but the system is rotting. And no, there's no Whole Foods in sight. Number 8. Lake City, the gateway to Florida's back row problems. If you've ever driven down I-75 and stopped in Lake City for gas, you probably thought, not bad. But stay longer than a fill-up, and the cracks start to show. Big, economic, reputation-sized cracks. They call Lake City the gateway to Florida, but that gateway leads more to frustration than opportunity. With a population hovering around 12,000, this North Florida town struggles with an identity crisis. Half logistics hub, half forgotten detour. And while the rest of the state pushes forward into tech, tourism, or finance, Lake City is stuck clutching its old industrial roots like a security blanket. Now let's break down the red flags. Median household income? Just under $33,000. The poverty rate? Around 25%. That's 1 in 4 people living below the line, and don't expect miracles from local leadership. Economic development plans here often sound promising, until they disappear into the bureaucratic ether. Job growth is stagnant, with many residents commuting to nearby counties just to make ends meet. Crime isn't catastrophic, but it's persistent. Lake City's violent crime rate is nearly 50% above the national average, with property crime, especially burglary and theft, dragging down neighborhood morale. The town does have a hospital and community college, but funding is tight and upgrades are slow. Public schools have faced teacher shortages, infrastructure issues, and performance metrics that leave concerned parents wondering if school choice includes just not choosing at all. And don't get me started on broadband. Some neighborhoods still act like Wi-Fi is a suggestion, not a service. What Lake City offers in natural beauty, nearby springs, parks, and forest, it subtracts in economic outlook and social investment. You're surrounded by greenery but stuck in gray uncertainty. Reddit threads call it the place where dreams pull a U-turn. Locals joke that the only growth industry is tire shops. Want to retire here? Maybe. Want to build a life? That's a harder sell, especially when city council meetings sound like group therapy sessions with extra zoning laws. Lake City is the kind of town where the welcome sign should come with a disclaimer. Gateway to Florida and gateway to staying stuck. Number 7. Leesburg, retirement dreams. Meet real-world nightmares. Leesburg might sound like the kind of peaceful lake town where you'd retire with a golden tan and a golf cart. But spend a week here, and the cracks show faster than Florida asphalt in July. Nestled in Lake County and surrounded by water, it's got the postcard charm on the outside. But underneath? It's Florida's equivalent of an aging cruise ship. Nice views, shaky plumbing, and a sinking feeling you can't shake. The town has over 25,000 residents, and a median income of around $38,000. Not abysmal, but not keeping up with inflation either. Housing might look affordable on Zillow, but that's before you factor in aging homes, flood insurance, and rising utility costs. Here's where things get weird. Despite being marketed as a senior paradise, Leesburg has some of the highest crime rates in Central Florida. Violent crime is 65% higher than the national average, and property crime? Let's just say, lock your car, even if you're just grabbing coffee. The downtown revitalization project tried its best, but budget cuts, local opposition, and poor planning meant that most of the improvements never got past the grant proposal phase. Homelessness has become a visible and growing issue, especially around commercial zones, and local shelters are stretched thin. Leesburg's economy leans heavily on retail, healthcare, and the retirement industry, none of which are particularly stable when wages are low and job turnover is high. And let's talk infrastructure. Flooding is common in low-lying areas, especially after heavy rains, and older neighborhoods struggle with outdated drainage systems. Public schools are hit or miss, and test scores fall below the state average in key areas like math and science. Several elementary schools are on state watch lists for performance, which isn't exactly what you want if you're trying to raise a family or teach one. It's the kind of town where people don't necessarily move away in droves. but they do quietly warn you not to move in. You'll find a dozen churches, $5 stores, and one Starbucks tucked into a gas station. There's charm here, but charm doesn't pay the bills or pave the roads. Leesburg is a place where your retirement dreams might not die, but they'll definitely slow down, limp a little, and call AA more often than they used to. Number 6. Haines City, the town that forgot what it was building. You know those towns that seem like they're about to blow up with growth, and then never do? That's Haines City. It sits in the shadow of Orlando and Lakeland, geographically blessed and logistically cursed. It was supposed to be the next big thing. Developers came in hot in the early 2000s, building subdivisions, strip malls, and even whispering things like Silicon South in planning meetings. But somewhere between the blueprint and the bank loan, the dreams evaporated. And now what's left is a city trying to outrun its own zoning mistakes. Let's talk numbers. Haines City has ballooned to nearly 30,000 residents, many of whom moved there looking for affordable housing. But what they got was infrastructure that didn't keep up. The average commute time is over 35 minutes, and traffic patterns look like a toddler drew them in crayon. Median household income hovers around $40,000, but with rent and home prices surging due to the spillover from Orlando, even middle-class families are stretching thin. Crime is moderate but rising, and the town has seen spikes in property theft, car break-ins and burglaries, particularly in newer neighborhoods that were slapped together during the post-2008 building spree. And then there's the schools. Polk County ranks in the bottom third of the state for education, and Haines City High has struggled for years with overcrowding, underfunding, and performance gaps. One teacher said, "We're teaching in trailers while the new golf course got city funding." That about sums it up. Parks are uneven. Some neighborhoods get pristine playgrounds, others get half-mowed grass and a broken swing. Internet access is hit or miss, and city government meetings often sound like reruns from the Twilight Zone, with the same arguments about zoning, traffic, and drainage going nowhere. You walk through downtown and feel the ghosts of ambition. There are restaurants that opened and closed in the same fiscal quarter. Billboards advertising things that never materialized. One resident joked, "Haines City is where your dreams go to pull permits and never come back." Harsh, but not wrong. It's not the worst place to live in Florida, but it's absolutely one of the most frustrating because it could have been so much more. And now, it's stuck between potential and potholes. Number 5. Bunnell, the town. Where the lights are on, but nobody's home now. If you've never heard of Bunnell, congratulations. That means your GPS hasn't led you astray, or you haven't made the mistake of taking a scenic route through Flagler County. Bunnell is the county seat. Yes, the county seat. And yet it still feels like the part of the movie where the main characters get lost and realize cell service won't save them. This town has just over 3,000 residents, but somehow it feels emptier than that. It's not just rural. It's eerily quiet. And not in a peaceful, birds chirping sort of way. More like, where did everyone go and why does that street lamp keep flickering? The median household income in Bunnell hovers around $32,000 with a poverty rate above 26%. That's bad. But what's worse is that there's almost no job market within city limits. People commute, if they can. Local employers are few, and they mostly consist of public jobs, small gas stations, and the occasional fast food franchise that can't keep staff longer than a tax season. Meanwhile, crime is rising. The violent crime rate is about 60% higher than the national average, and drug-related arrests have spiked in the past 5 years. Meth labs aren't just plot lines in Breaking Bad. Here, they've been documented within walking distance of schools. Bunnell's downtown. Picture 3 closed storefronts, 1 open pawn shop, and a mural that hasn't been updated since the Obama administration. Infrastructure is laughable. Roads are pockmarked, sidewalks are optional, and street signs are faded like Florida's memory of funding. And yes, water quality complaints have been filed with the state. In 2022, residents reported odor and discoloration in tap water. And while the city issued assurances, those still brushing their teeth with bottled water aren't convinced. Public schools are technically part of the Flagler County School District, but if you live in Bunnell, Odds are your child's school bus ride is longer than your job application history. Even the weather here feels a little angrier. The heat clings longer. The storms seem louder. And if you're renting, buckle up. Landlords know they're your only option and charge accordingly, even if the AC unit sounds like it's coughing up a raccoon. One Reddit user wrote, "Bunnell is where ambition goes to ghost itself." That's poetic, and unfortunately, accurate. Number 4. Opa-locka, where the architecture's Moroccan but the problems are. All-American welcome to Opa-locka, the only city in America with Arabian-style domes and towers, and possibly the highest per capita corruption charges in Florida history. No, seriously. Opa-locka isn't just rough around the edges, it's wrapped in dysfunction. This Miami-Dade County city has made headlines for everything except livability. Let's talk crime. Opa-locka consistently ranks in the top 5% most dangerous cities in Florida. Violent crime? Over 100% higher than the national average. You've got a 1 in 47 chance of being assaulted here. Property crime is through the roof, and break-ins are so common locals have adapted with security setups that look like low-budget Fort Knox reenactments. Now you might be thinking, well, at least it's near Miami, right? Wrong. Being near Miami doesn't mean you're living like Miami. The median household income in Opa-locka is just $24,700. That's not a typo. And nearly 40% of residents live in poverty, making this one of the poorest cities in the state. Unemployment has stayed consistently high, and job creation efforts have failed repeatedly, often due to, you guessed it, political drama. In fact, this city was the subject of a massive FBI corruption probe in 2016 that resulted in dozens of city officials being indicted or investigated. Bribery, fraud, embezzlement. Opa-locka doesn't just make headlines, it makes case files. The city was under state financial oversight until 2022, after nearly a decade of failed audits, missing funds, and mismanagement so bad the state basically had to step in and babysit. Even basic city services like water billing became a scandal. Residents were sent inaccurate utility bills for years, some showing thousands in charges for homes that hadn't used more than a garden hose. And let's not forget the roads. Potholes here aren't just annoying, they're life-altering. One viral tweet said, "Driving through Opa-locka is like playing Mario Kart with real suspension damage." Schools are part of Miami-Dade County, but local students face overcrowding, underfunded programs, and performance scores below state average. Parks and recreation? You mean the lot with a bench and no trash cans? Opa-locka is a city with a beautiful name, exotic buildings, and a history that reads like a cautionary tale. If you move here thinking it's just an up-and-coming suburb, you'll quickly find out that up-and-coming is still stuck at the red light, and someone already stole the catalytic converter off your car. Number 3. Wildwood. Where Florida's expansion left the soul behind on paper, Wildwood sounds like a great place to be. It's next to the Villages, that massive, ever-expanding retirement utopia with golf carts, pickleball, and nightly karaoke. But here's the dirty little secret. Wildwood isn't the Villages. It's the ghost town in the Villages' shadow. And if you blink, you might miss the part where this town's identity was completely swallowed whole by a developer's dream. The result? A place that technically exists, but doesn't seem to know why. The population here has surged from under 6,000 in 2010 to over 16,000 in 2023. But don't be fooled. Most of that growth is happening in walled-off, HOA-dominated micro-villages built for retirees. The actual Wildwood residents? They're stuck in a place that hasn't kept up with its own expansion. Median household income is just over $34,000, and nearly 20% of the population lives below the poverty line. Jobs are scarce outside of service work for the Villages. That means if you're not cleaning homes, cooking, or fixing golf carts, you're probably commuting to Ocala or Claremont just to earn a living wage. Meanwhile, infrastructure is under siege. Roads weren't built for this kind of population boom. Traffic congestion has tripled in a decade, and water services are stretched so thin that new residents have faced delays in utility hookups and water pressure issues. One resident posted online, "We waited 8 months to get a functioning street light and 6 weeks for a trash bin." And the schools? Overcrowded, under-equipped, and trailing behind the rest of Sumter County in test scores. And here's where it gets weird. Zoning laws are so tangled, Wildwood City Council meetings regularly devolve into arguments over whether it's even possible to maintain a coherent town identity anymore. Residents who've lived here for decades say it doesn't feel like their town anymore. One retiree called it the village's broom closet. Harsh, but maybe not wrong. You've got retirees with deep pockets moving in, developers cashing out, and original residents trying to keep their heads above water while their property taxes climb and their voices shrink. Wildwood isn't collapsing. It's disappearing. Not all at once, but piece by piece. And the worst part? Most Floridians don't even realize it's happening. Number 2. Port St. Lucie, the Florida mirage that eats your paycheck alive. Now this one is going to make some people mad, because on paper Port St. Lucie looks like a win. New homes, clean streets, palm trees placed with almost unsettling precision. Realtors love this place. Builders love this place. But if you actually live here, different story. Port St. Lucie is what happens when growth outruns reality and nobody bothers to hit the brakes. It's one of the fastest growing cities in Florida, pushing past 230,000 residents, and yet the economy underneath that growth is shockingly thin. Let's start with the number that quietly ruins lives here. Wages. Median household income sits around $62,000, which sounds decent until you compare it to the cost of living explosion. Home prices have jumped more than 60% since 2020, rents are up over 40%, and insurance costs? Don't even get me started. Many homeowners are paying $6,000, $9,000 a year just for insurance, assuming they can get coverage at all. Meanwhile, the local job market is dominated by healthcare aides, retail, logistics, and service work. High-paying corporate jobs? Sparse. Remote workers survive. Locals struggle. Traffic here is another quiet killer. Port St. Lucie was not designed for this many people. Commute times regularly exceed 45 minutes. Accidents are frequent, and public transportation is almost symbolic. You need a car, you need patience, and you need to accept that half your day will be spent staring at brake lights wondering how a city with no real downtown still managed to gridlock itself. Crime isn't explosive, but it's climbing. Property crime in particular has risen steadily, especially in newer developments that assumed nice houses meant no crime. Schools are overcrowded. Class sizes are ballooning. Teachers are leaving. And infrastructure? Always one step behind. New developments pop up faster than sewage upgrades, leading to water pressure issues, flooding complaints, and emergency moratoriums that developers somehow always work around. Port St. Lucie feels like a promise that overextended itself. It's not poor. It's not dangerous in the classic sense. It's financially suffocating. This is where middle-class families slowly realize they're one insurance hike away from panic. People don't leave Port St. Lucie because it's ugly. They leave because it's exhausting, because the math stops working, because the dream they bought into came with a monthly payment nobody warned them about. And if you think this is bad, wait until you hear about the place that took the #1 spot. Number 1. Florida City, where Florida quietly gives up on you. If Florida City sounds generic, that's fitting, because this place has been forgotten so thoroughly it barely registers in the state's consciousness. Sitting just south of Miami, near the entrance to the Keys and Everglades National Park, Florida City should be thriving. Tourism gateway, strategic location, sunshine economy. Instead, it's the worst place to live in Florida, and it's not even close. Let's start with the raw truth. Median household income, around $36,000. Poverty rate, over 30%. Unemployment consistently higher than state averages. And crime? This is where it gets ugly. Florida City's violent crime rate is more than double the national average, with aggravated assaults and robberies far exceeding what a city this size should see. Property crime is rampant. Break-ins, car theft, vandalism. It's routine, not shocking. But crime is just the surface problem. The real issue is systemic neglect. Schools here are some of the lowest performing in Miami-Dade County. Graduation rates lag. Resources are thin. Parents who can afford it send their kids elsewhere. Those who can't are stuck watching the cycle repeat. Healthcare access is limited, with residents often traveling long distances for specialists. Public transit exists, but reliability is questionable at best. And job opportunities? Mostly low-wage, seasonal, or tied to tourism that doesn't reinvest locally. Housing is another trap. Prices have surged due to Miami spillover, but wages haven't followed. Many residents spend over 40% of their income on housing, officially qualifying as cost-burdened. Homes are older, maintenance is deferred, and landlords know tenants have few alternatives. Flood risk is high, insurance is brutal. And yet development money flows around Florida City, not into it. Investors pass through, locals stay stuck. What makes Florida City number one isn't just hardship, it's hopelessness. There's no clear plan, no revitalization momentum, no sense that help is coming. Residents describe it as living in a waiting room where the appointment was canceled years ago, but nobody told you. One longtime resident said it best: Florida City isn't dangerous because something might happen. It's dangerous because nothing ever changes. You wake up here to sirens, not birds. You lock your doors out of habit, not fear, because it's routine. You drive past boarded-up businesses next to luxury developments meant for people who won't live here. You feel invisible. And that's why Florida City takes the top spot. Not because it's loud, not because it's dramatic, but because it's where Florida quietly stops trying.